Hi everyone. Next we're going to go through our guided practice on 3 different types of drawings, and I'll show you some skills that you're going to need. I did want to mention again the cheat sheets that we have. The dimensioning cheat sheet I've already shown you. It's the one that looks like this, and I'll have to rotate it for you to see. So this one again has a lot of really important notes and things that you're going to need. It's got a picture of a multi-view here. And again, something as simple as placing the dimensions away from the object. So the first dimension, so this 1-inch dimension coming off of this edge of the object, this first dimension should be 3/8 of an inch away from the object. Then adjacent dimensions, side-by-side dimensions, should be no closer than a quarter of an inch. So we want to be consistent with that again. Try to stay as consistent as possible. You don't want things all over the place. Okay, so that's our first one. Let's go back and look at our next one. Our next one is our Ansi geometric symbols. This one, we use a style of lettering called GDT in AutoCAD, and it's already set up on your template. If you hit the cap lock button, all your letters are just regular letters, but if you use lowercase letters, each lowercase letter, and when you type it, will put a symbol in. One of the most common symbols we use is diameter. So if you need to write a note and use the diameter symbol, you would type the lowercase n and it would put that in for you. Others that we use a lot. The V is counterbore, the W is countersink, the X is depth. So all of those are really important dealing with holes. So how deep does a hole go into the object? You'll need this symbol. If it goes all the way through it, we don't have to worry about it. A counterbore is what you do so a bolt head will sit down inside of a little pocket so it's flush and you can get over the top of it and you don't have things hitting it. A countersink is what you do to the top of a hole so that a screw head, a machine screw head, will sit down into like a little V pocket and get it out of the way. Okay, our next one is dealing with counterbores and countersinks and spot faces. Again, I'll rotate this so you can see it. So a counterbore, here's a picture of a counterbore hidden. And again, like I said, you can imagine a bolt sitting down in this, and the head of the bolt would be here so that you could have something that runs over the top of it and not hit it. So if you notice the note for this, the diameter of 1 is the small hole. And notice the arrow is actually pointing at the small hole. This is the control number. You always put it first. The diameter of the big hole, or the counterbore, is 1.5 inches. And the depth of the counterbore, so we read it in that order, the depth of the counterbore is 1/2 inch. And then we locate that, of course, in this view. Now for a countersink, this is dealing with, we talked about a screw head. So again, we locate it here. The diameter is the actual size of the hole that the screw is going down in. Then we've got a depth for it because it doesn't go all the way through. And then we've got how big is the actual diameter of the V. And it's 1.5 inches in this picture. These numbers are just for reference. You probably would never see a screw that big, but that's what that is. The last one's called a spot face. If you notice, look at this spot face and look at the counterbore. They're very, very, very similar. The reason why is a spot face is where we want to machine out just enough to get a good flat spot. Maybe the surface is rough and we want a good flat spot for a bolt head to sit down. So what we're going to do, we're going to give the first diameter, which is the small hole. Then we're going to give the diameter using the counterbore symbol again for the large hole or the spot face. Notice we don't give depth like we did here. The reason why we don't give depth is because the depth on the spot hole is just short enough to where we've got a flat surface. That's typically somewhere around 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so let's go back now. What we're going to do now is we're going to go in and we're going to look at the guided practice. And what you're going to do is you're going to open up the guided practice 1 through 3. And when you do that, it's going to come in and it's going to look like this in AutoCAD. I've already took the liberty to draw these drawings for you. You're going to leave them on this page. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to Save As. And you're going to save as guided practice 1 through 3. And if I was doing this, I would go behind it. I'd put another dash and I would put the initials DA for my name. That's how I will save this and turn it in. So guided practice 1 through 3 -DA. That's how you're going to save that, okay? So let's look at the first drawing. I'm going to pan over. I'm going to zoom in so I can see it. And we're going to do dimensions. So typically you're on this home row. So we've got draw, modify, annotation. That's what we're doing. We're annotating a drawing. And if you notice here, we've got what's called a linear dimension. A linear dimension is either a horizontal dimension or a vertical dimension. If we hit the drop down beside of that, notice we can do an aligned dimension. We rarely ever use this one. Sometimes you might need it, but we rarely ever use it in the class. How big is an angle? That's going to give you a degree reading, okay? And then the other two we use tremendously is radius for an arc and diameter for a full circle, or something that started out life as a full circle, like a hole. So these we'll use a lot. The angular we'll use a lot, and the linear. Those will be the main ones we'll use. The other thing that we're going to use is text. So if we need to type text in on something, we can type it in. And what we can do is we can drop down. Now this is multi-line is when it comes up. Y'all are familiar with multi-line. So if I hit multi-line, what it wants to do is that's where you draw a text box and then start typing. And notice it pops up on the screen. I'm going to hit escape. But the one that I like to use the most is single line text. I'll click. It says specify start point. And I'll click. Now justify lets you justify to the left, to the right, to the center, just like it does in a Word document or a Google Doc. Okay? So I'm going to click here. And then notice what it says. Specify rotation angle. Well, a 0 degree rotation angle, which is the default, is out to the right. I don't even have to pull out here and click. I can just hit enter. And then it says text. Now I can start typing. So I'm going to hit my cap lock and I'm going to type my name. So there's Darren done like that. I'm going to hit enter and it'll go down to my next line. Now I'm going to cut my text lock off and I'm going to type Darren again. But notice this is lowercase letters now. Notice what it looks like. It's almost like code. It's using those symbols off of that sheet I was telling you about. So make sure if you're typing, if you don't need a symbol, make sure you've got your cap lock on, okay? So I'm going to hit undo and get rid of that. So that's how we're going to do that if we need text. And again, remember, this one will stay on top if we like it. If you want to get to more detailed annotate devices, instead of just using it here, we can come up here and click the annotate tab. And now we've got the same thing. Here's our text at the far end. Here's our dimensions. So the one we were using was linear, and again, the same drop down. Okay. If we need a center mark or a center line, we can do that here. Leaders, we're going to get into leaders, and we're going to use the multi-leader here in a little while. So that's something else. If you need to edit any of these functions, the little arrow in the bottom corner gets us to the edit. So to edit our text style, we would click on that arrow. To edit our dimension style, we would click on that arrow. And the same thing for our leader style. We would click on this arrow. I've got it set up now to where it will work for you, so you shouldn't have to do any of that. But in the future, it's something that we will work on later on, okay? So first thing we want to do when we look at an object and go to dimension it, we want to figure out how many parts make up the object. So let's look. If this object was a complete rectangle, look what we would have to do. We would have to cut out this part and cut out this part to make the part. Okay, so we've really got two features, one on each side. So we're going to need enough dimensions to tell how wide these parts are, and then we're going to need to have dimensions that tell how tall it is from here to here or from here to here. And then we need an overall width and an overall depth. So in this object, when we do our dimensions across here to tell how big these things are, if we've got an overall width, and let's just check our dimension out of curiosity. Let's measure from here to here, and that object is 2.5 inches. So we're going to put that 2.5 inch measurement up here. So if we've got 3 parts, and what do I mean by 3 parts? Look, 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts. So 3 parts make up the entire top of this object. You always give, when we give a chain of dimensions or a string of dimensions, 1 less than the whole. So if I've got 3 dimensions here to make up the whole part, I'm only going to give 2. Now, which 2 do I give? I could give this one and this one. I could give this one and this one. Or I could give this one and this one. I personally like to give where I'm doing something. So I'm cutting this out. I'm cutting this out. I'm leaving this alone. So this is probably the one I would leave out in this case. Now, I could give this one and this one, and it would be perfectly fine. But like I said, that's a personal preference type thing. I like giving whoever's making the part a dimension from where I'm cutting. So let's add our first dimension. So let's go to linear dimension. I'm going to click here because I want a dimension horizontally from here here, so horizontally, going this way. So I've got to pick the corner I'm talking about. So I'm talking about that corner. I'm talking about that corner is my second point. Notice now I pull up. And I get approximately 3/8 of an inch off the object. I'm eyeballing it in. That's about right. Now notice it throws my dimension over here to the side and sort of extends the dimension line. I don't really like the looks of that. I'd love to have my number in the middle of this. Well, with a clean command line at the bottom, I can click on it. Now I can click on the blue grip, drag it over to the midpoint of that line, and click again. And look, I'm going to hit the escape button. It puts it in the middle. That's beautiful. That's where I want that. Okay? Now I need to do the same thing over here. So I can go dimension, click, click, drag up. Where do I want it? I want it to be at the same level this one is. So I'm going to hover over this endpoint, and I'm going to click there. And again, it set this number out here, so I'm going to click on it, blue grip, drag over to the middle. Now I'm going to show you one little shortcut here. I'm going to get rid of this dimension. So watch what I can do. I could go to mirror and click on this dimension because I know that this is dead center and these are the same size. Now I'm going to hit enter. I've selected my object. Now it says select the first point of my mirror line. The middle of that line, I'm going to drag straight down, click, and I want to keep my source object. So I'm going to hit no. Notice it just mirrored it around. It put the numbers the way they should be. Okay? So either way is fine. By the way, make sure you're working in the dimension layer. This is the same if you're working in AutoCAD or in the AutoCAD web app. Either one. Okay? In AutoCAD web app, again, you're going to want to work under the little button on the bottom of the left of the screen that says annotate or dimension, whichever one it says. Okay? So there's those two numbers. Notice I'm going to leave that number out. Okay? The next thing I need across the top is I need the overall dimension. Now, I'm going to click here again. Notice there is a gap down here between the object and the extension line. You want that there because if you don't, it looks sort of like the object line would keep right on going. So you always want a gap. Notice there's a gap at every one of these. Okay? That's built into the dimension. So I'm going to click again on this endpoint. I'm going to click on this endpoint, and I'm going to drag straight up. Oh, no, I missed my endpoint. I clicked too far over. So I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to be really careful this time. Endpoint, come over, endpoint. Hey, I got it that time. Drag straight up, 2.5 right there. And notice that's about 1/4 of an inch or so between them. That looks really good. Now let's do our vertical. So again, I can either give, I've got two parts, 1, 2. I can give this one or this one and an overall. I, again, like to give this dimension just because it's the part that they're working on, where they're doing the actual cut. So I'm going to go back in. I'm going to click on this corner. Notice it's got a little circle there. That's called a node. Anytime you see a circle with an X through it, a node is just a point. And that it places a point right before it makes the gap. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to click on the endpoint. I'm going to drag out this time. Notice I didn't drag up. I drug out. And there's my 1.5 inch dimension. And I'm going to drop it right about, there. Okay? Now I'm going to do one more. I'm going to go back into dimension. Click again there. Click again here. Drag out. And click there. So now, the question you always want to ask yourself, have I told the overall height and width, if it's a single view, the overall height and width of the object? If it's a multi-view, you want to be sure you're telling height, width, and depth, right? And then have I told the actual size and location of each feature? If you can answer yes to that. So what do I mean by location? Where is it located at, left to right? Yes. Where is it located at, top to bottom? Yes. So size, sometimes size and location is the same thing. And then given my overalls. Have I done that? If you can say yes for all the features and all the parts, and then given your overall, you're good to go. Now, some people will say, well, Mr. Atkins, why didn't you give this dimension over here? Well, I really don't need it because these are identical. If I leave this off, it is implied that it's the same height. If you don't put it, it will be implied that they are the same height. If you're worried about it, you can put that number in. Okay? So that's how we dimension the first one. Now, if you notice down here in the red, it says, edit the text in red to match your personal information. So I can double click on that and notice everything sort of turns blue in a box. I'm going to put my cap lock on and now I can type Darren Atkins, and I've got that one done. Okay? And then I can come over here and double click on this one. I can type in the date, today's date, and today I'd put 05, 08, 2020. And then pick out your class period, the class period we normally have, first, second, third, fourth, and then whatever your seat number is. Okay? So edit those texts, and that way it'll be right on your drawing. You don't have to worry about anything that's in white. Okay? So make sure you do that for each drawing. Now again, we're going to turn all three of these drawings in together, just on one sheet, so you don't have to worry about turning in three separate drawings. So there's the first one done. Now the second one, notice what we've got here. How many features? Start with a rectangle. 1, 2, 3. Now this is a chamfer or an angled cut. The reason why you see this is there's two ways to give chamfer information or angled cut information. We'll get to that in a minute. So let's worry about the top first. So I'm going to start over here just because it's wider. I like doing a wider spot and I do a narrower spot. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to go over to here and I'm going to drag straight up. And there's the 1 inch. That's how wide it is from there to there. Now I want to give this cut. Again, dimension, top corner, drag up and click. So it's 1 inch in and 1 inch wide. So this is a location dimension. How far is this cut located in? And then this is a size dimension. How big is it? So you got location and size. Now we need to know how deep is that cut. So let's go to dimension. And notice, this is the top edge. I don't have to start here. I can start here. Because remember, I want a gap. So what happens if I start here? So if I start here and go to here, and remember, we need to put the dimension off the object. You don't put it in the middle here. You don't put it on the line. We pull it off the object. Notice there is no gap right here. So what we want to do instead of doing that, I'll delete that one, is we want to go from this corner to this corner and drag out. Oh, that looks so much better. So notice, location, location, size. We've gave location, location, size. Left to right, top to bottom, how big is it? Okay. Now let's look at this cut. So where can I do this cut at? Well, let's locate it first. So let's locate it from the bottom. Location is there. And where do I put that number? Again, come up here and hover over the end of the arrowhead and click. Now they're in a line. We're making that chain. See, here's the chain we're talking about. Okay. Now, how big is the cut? How wide is it? Click from there to there. Again, hover over the end of the arrow point. There it is. So that's how big that is. Now, notice what we've got here. This is kind of funny looking. We talk about, how many parts on this first one, how many parts make the hole across the top? 1, 2, 3. That's easy to see. Well, how about the right side on this one? This one's a little tougher to see. Notice 1, 2, 3, and then 4, the void between them. So there's 4. So we're leaving out that. It don't really look like a dimension, does it? But it is. It's just not there, okay? So now we need to know how deep this hole is. Again, we're going to get the outside edge and that corner and drag straight down. And it's a 1/2 inch. And again, I would want to put this on the inside. It just looks better. So I'm going to click, grab the blue grip, go to the midpoint of that and click. And notice what it does for us when I hit escape. It throws it, the arrows to the outside and the number to the inside. Again, this extension line crosses over the object line. That's fine. That doesn't hurt a thing. The only line we don't want to cross is a dimension line. In other words, a line with a number in it. So, location, location, size. Location, location, size. The only thing we've got left is the angled cut. There are two ways to do an angled cut. We can give its location left to right and location top to bottom, because what you're giving is the endpoints, and then we can just cut between them. Or we can give location left to right or top to bottom, and then the angle between them. Either one will work fine. So on this one, we'll zoom in, dimension angle using location, location method on the drawing, and then location angle in the alternate bubble. So location, location, click on the endpoint, click on the endpoint. Ooh, I missed again. See, you've got to be really careful when you click. Click here, make sure you get the X or the box, drag down now, line up with this line, and click 1 inch. Now let's do it the other way. Click here, endpoint again, click here, drag out, 1 inch. There it is. Can you guess what angle this is? 1 inch and 1 inch. Both legs are the same distance, so that's a 45-degree angle. Let's check it in the next drawing. So now let's click here. And let's click here and drag down again 1 inch. I'm going to line it up with this one again just to be consistent. Now I want angle, so I'm going to hit the drop down and I'm going to go to angular. I usually click on my angled line first to start with, but you don't have to. So remember, we're reading off of the horizontal. So I'm going to click here. It says specify first line, select line. Now it says specify second line. This is the line we want to read off of. Click, drag out, 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 and notice we get extension lines again and about 3/8 away. This arrowhead's about 3/8 away from the object. So there's the alternate method to this. Whichever one works best on your drawing is the one you want to use. Okay, so that's how we would complete the second one. So again, are we done? Let's look. Location, 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 size. Location, location, size. Location, size, location, size given together. Everything looks great, doesn't it? Wait a minute, how wide is it? How tall is it? Ah, we about forgot. So from here to here and drag straight up. There we go, 2.75. And then how wide is it? Again, from here to here, drag straight out, and it's 0.400. So it's 4 inches. Now, if these numbers were really close together, this is a neat little trick we can do too. We can click on it, grab the grip at the number, and we can drag up or down and sort of off-center it a little bit, and it'll look a little bit better. Now I can hit escape and notice these two numbers are not as close together. You never want dimensions side by side, left to right like that, because a lot of times that'll look like an addition problem. Be careful with that. Okay? So there's the second one done. Again, you would fill in this information at the bottom. So now let's look at the third one. So if this was a complete square, how many features do we have? Well, we've got a cutout. There's one. Then we've got a rounded corner. There's two. Then we've got another rounded corner. There's three. Remember, an outside rounded corner is called a round. An inside rounded corner is called a fillet. AutoCAD doesn't care. It calls them all fillets. Okay? So let's do some dimensioning. Let's go ahead and let's start with our rounded corners. So now this is just an arc. So I'm going to use drop down and I'm going to use radius. Notice I've got center points here. I left these on the drawings. Yours may not have them on it. It's okay if it doesn't. You can place center points if you want to. So I'm going to click here. We want it at a convenient angle. So 45, 30, 60, and you're just eyeballing it in. So right about there looks pretty good. Okay? 1 inch. I'm going to go back into the very same command and click on this one. And notice it wants to throw it inside the object. This is an interesting problem because ideally we want this to cross through the center line and come out. The only problem is notice if I pull way out here, look what it does. It wants to do something really weird. Okay? So the best thing to do is try to get about as far away as you can. Okay? Now, if you get too close to this, this is going to look odd. So this may be a situation where you don't even want that center line there. So I could hit on it, delete it, and it's gone. See the little dot right there? That's the node we were talking about. Okay? Now, the other way of fixing that, I'm going to hit undo, and I'm going to put it back. Remember the command we talked about in Modify called Explode? It's right here. That's where it takes something that's got a lot of parts, but you want to change it all individual parts. Look at this. If I click on this, notice everything that lights up. The node, the dimension itself, the leader, all this stuff lights up. Well, I can explode that. It doesn't look like anything happened, but look, there's the number, there's a line, there's a line, there's an arrowhead. I've broken it into individual parts. So what I can do now is I can do a command called stretch. Put it around it like that, hit stretch, grab that endpoint, go straight to the middle, and then drag on out and use the apparent intersection. It's a little tough to do, but do that. And then once I get that done, now it looks correct. But remember, these are all individual parts. It looks kind of funny. And you have to be really careful putting it in there. But that's one way of doing it. Okay, I'm going to undo that. You're not going to have to do that this time. Okay? If I were you, I would take this off just because it reads better like that. Okay? So there's those two things. Well, the only other thing we've got to do now is show this cutout. So now let's go into the linear dimension. Now, because I've got a number here, this is one of the odd times that I'm going to dimension from here to here. Click, and drag up. And then I'm going to dimension from here to here. Because I'm dimensioning from square corners, this time I'm not actually dimensioning the cut that I'm making. But because this number's in here, I don't like putting a bunch of stuff in here if I can help it. Okay? You would be fine by giving these two numbers instead. I'll show that to you as well. So I could just as easily went here to here and drug up, and here to here and drug out. That would have worked, but notice it looks kind of funky with all that like that. Okay, so I'm going to hit undo. I do like this one just a little bit better. Sometimes you'll look at something and go, you know what, I would like it better if it was the other way. If you do, change it. That's fine. But have a reason why you changed it. The only thing we need is our overall dimension. So let's click on it. Let's go here and drag straight up. Let's click here and drag straight out. And there's that object fully dimensioned. Now we've got another situation. Give fillet dimension using leader on the drawing and use the dimension radius tool in the alternate bubble. Well, we've already done the dimension radius tool. Let's go back and do it again. So that's what we did right here. That's the dimension radius tool. Well, you say, well, Mr. Atkins, we did that here too. We did. I want to show you something now. I want to get rid of this completely. I'm going to hit delete. This time I'm going to use what's called a leader. It's called multi-leader. I'm going to click. I'm going to click here. I'm going to drag through my center point and drag out. And now look what I've got. Now I need the letter R because it's asking for text. I need the size 0.75. And now once I get that done, I just hit my left mouse button and that puts it in as a leader. You say, but you don't have the crosshair there anymore. You're right, I did take that away, so I'm just going to copy this one. I'm going to copy it where those two lines cross, right there. I'm going to find my center point. There it is. Click. And now that's in there correctly. So either one of these is acceptable. Excuse me. So there's that one fully dimensioned as well. Again, you would fill in the red information. So this is a drawing showing you how many dimensions you need and cutouts. Here again is cutouts located away from the corners and an angled or chamfered dimension. And this one has got rounded corners. You can actually look at these and use these as your dimension practice as you go through it. So basically all you're having to do is pretty much copy what I've just gave you and you'll be able to complete these as well. But these are really good practice items. Have fun with them, enjoy them. I look forward to seeing your work. Have a great day.